All right, so welcome back. You are listening to the Mid Morning Talk on Salam Media with me, Maryam Mkwanda. It is 12:32. When it comes to general parenting practices in early childhood, being warm, sensitive, and applying parental control, differences in the treatment of boys and girls are small. Yet differences appear implicit parenting practices. As soon as a child is identified as a boy or a girl, parents form expectations about the child's interests, skills, and behaviors, and these expectations appear in gendered parenting practices. Are we raising our children according to gender roles? And should we raise our children according to gender roles? I'm going to share a bit of an article written by Kabela Chabalala, who is a writer and a columnist. And he says here, a man must feel free and happy to cook for his family while he instills a similar attitude to his sons about never linking housework to gender. A man must feel free and happy to cook for his family. It is very clear that we want to raise boys that can clean after themselves and cook for themselves. We live in a society that strongly believes that these are basic life skills and not gender roles. Um, as we gear up to celebrate International Women's Day on March 8th, I hope we realize that our goal to achieve gender equality for sustainable future also means girls have to learn that being financially stable is not a gender role. And Kabelo is joining me on the line right now. Good day, Kabelo. Thank you for joining me.
Good day, and how are you?
I'm good. Thanks. And yourself?
Awesome.
All right, so gender roles. Gender roles have always been a part of our lives. They form part of our discussions every now and then, especially when it comes to who needs to do what in the household, especially if we were raised with siblings who, if we had brothers and sisters in the house, and boys had to always do the garden work and girls had to always do the housework. But things are changing in this day and age, and we are trying to break away from that. So how do gender roles affect parenting?
I think one of the things that we need to also be very cognizant of is that, of course, boys and girls don't have the same level of strength, right? And
Yes.
often I say, even to the boys that I mentor, that if they see move about 20 bricks from one spot to the other, I know that if you are tasked to do that, you probably do it more quicker and more faster. Instead of taking a brick or two, you might even take three and move it to the other side, which will then make the process quicker. But what parents are missing in most cases is still trying to cage the boys and still trying to cage the girls on things that I think are really unnecessary. For example, whether Kabelo is wearing a pink shirt or a very colorful shirt, it has nothing to do with his gender, right? But
Yeah.
we come from a society where pink has to be associated with girls. Even when we do the so-called gender reveals um, for at a baby shower, it's always geared towards the colors. The blue would be for the boys, the pink for the girls. But how did we even get there? How do we now make boys think that wearing something pink that they like makes them less of a male child? And how do we even also get to a point where we ask girls not to play with cars, aeroplanes, guns, and whatnot, because they could be the next people to be inventing one of the fastest or the most beautiful or the most fuel efficient cars. So by us continuing with all these roles, defining what is for the boys, what is not for the girls, we are not only just how they think, but we are also being so regressive in how we approach our parenting. Any toy can be played by any child. So we need to move away from restricting our children from becoming whatever that they want to become. We need to get to that space where we allow them to be. We allow them to play with whatever they want to play with. We allow them to be in spaces that they want to be in.
Now, what is the impact of the gender roles that society creates and enforces?
I think what it does, even in that beginning stage, is that if we are saying to boys they must only start to play with guns, we are basically encouraging violence in boys.
Hmm.
And that is quite a dangerous element. But once we allow them to play with anything across board, they would realize that playing with the dolls and stuff will actually nurture the femininity in them, the softness in how they do things. Not everything has to be hard, loud, screams and whatnot. And I think what we actually do, the injustice we do more, is towards the male child than the girl than the female child. Because
Yeah.
everything that they do has to do with violence. It has to do with shouting. It has to do with being strong. Even when you don't have to be strong, you end up wanting to strive for that strength that you don't even need at that particular point. So we stifle their humility. We stifle the kind of people that they would become. Because when we start, we're thinking that's what's good for them. But later on, we discover that the very same foundation is part of the reason why they become so isolated, while they don't want to talk about their feelings. Because everything that we introduce them to says they must not actually speak about how they feel. They must be hard. They must understand that crying is not even an option, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And that is so unfortunate because what kind of message are we giving to our male children? We are telling them that they should not show emotions, and then they grow up to become these men who are facing all sorts of mental health challenges. Because they did
Correct.
not have the opportunity to show their emotions when they were younger, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with crying. We need to change the way that we raise our boys, our sons, and it also raises the question on we want to empower women, yes, and that is great, but then what happens to the male child? Shouldn't they also be
Correct.
empowered so that they can handle the
Mhm.
empowered woman?
Yes, you're right. Because one of the biggest mistakes about um, the cause of empowerment is that the KPIs, for a lack of a better word, were not well defined. We talk about how women were previously disadvantaged, and this is what 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? But when
Yeah.
you talk about empowering women, instead of targeting the women that are 40, 30, and where they are at the time, to say, okay, fine, some should be in management, some should be in political offices, and whatever the case. What we then do, we start with the girl child who has nothing to do with that disempowerment. Now, the empowered girl that is between 0 and 20 now is going to grow up with the empowered girl, with a disempowered boy that is 0 and 20, and is going to feel frustrated because they were not given half the chance to also be empowered. So our empowerment goals are very, very, very much um, unfortunate in their approach because they've missed one big goal, which is to say, yes, they were previously disadvantaged, but the kind of generation of boys and girls or men and women that we want is where both sexes are given equal opportunities to grow up in a world where both of them are empowered and both of them will feel equal to each other.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I have a few comments coming in here from Corne Kruger, who says, will this mean that fathers will stop being discriminated against in courts and at social workers, family advocates, magistrates, and judges? Society are breaking down boys from a young age by constantly telling them that fathers are in some way or another less worthy. There are no improvement programs for boys, only for girls. Please share any government improvement programs for boys that you may know of.
I think that is actually quite a good point because
Mm-hmm.
there was a piece that I wrote, I think about 2 weeks ago, that spoke to how the laws that govern family and maintenance are also flawed. Because often we find out that some women use that law to ensure that they push away the father. But
Mm-hmm.
equally, some men think that by separating with the mothers of their children, this justifies their inactiveness in the lives of their children, which is also a problem. But I think that the fathers have to be in a space where they realize that it is not just their responsibility to provide financially. They equally have to be there for their children emotionally, physically, and otherwise.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, going forward, how do we raise our children, or should we raise them to according to gender roles?
I think we should do away with the gender roles, but still take advantage of the different abilities that they have. Like I said, boys are more stronger physically. That is what comes with their genes, right? So if you have two kids in the house, a boy and a girl, and that task that needs to be done, you can quickly say, okay, that one would require more strength. So the boy child can just, go and sort it out while the girl child does something else that won't be heavy on them. Because the chores also have to be equal in terms of what one can handle and what one cannot handle. But you never have to label them as this is for the girl child, this is for the boy child. It just has to do with who can do it better and who can do it quicker. And once we look at it from that perspective, the boys will not want to sit when their sister is not home and say, but that's my sister's job to cook for
Mm-hmm.
us or clean after us. They will know that once the house is dirty or they are hungry, they have to go to the kitchen, make food and eat. You understand? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's the basic thing. And the most saddest thing is that I often say that boys eat more than girls. And I don't understand why they're not in the kitchen more often because they have a
Yeah.
lot more food than anyone else. So yeah, I think that's how we should try and look at it in how we move forward.
All right. Kabelo, thank you so much for your time and for unpacking the article that you wrote. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Right. In her book titled We Should All Be Feminist, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie opines gender matters everywhere in the world. And I would like today to ask that we begin to dream about and plan for a different world, a fairer world, a world of happier men and happier women who are truer to themselves. And this is how to start. We must raise our daughters differently. We must also raise our sons differently. That is from the opinion piece, the article that was written by Kabela Chabalala, a writer and a columnist. And what are your thoughts about raising our children according to gender roles? I mean, we are trying to do away with that so that we can have opportunities for both girls and for boys. And the government really needs to step up and do more for our boys. I mean, we cannot put them aside, push them aside, and pretend that they don't exist. And then tomorrow, when we have a problem of gender-based violence, then it's like, what happened along the lines? What happened is that there were no programs for the boys. What happened is that the boys were left on the sideline. They were sidelined, and nobody took them under their wing and said, boys, here's a program for you. Here is what you can do. Instead, they are taught that you're supposed to be tough and you should not shed tears and you should not let a woman walk all over you, etc., etc. We need to raise our sons and daughters differently. And I'm going to read a little bit more from the article by Cabello. He says, we are a people that suffer from selective amnesia. We look at the world today with the zeal and urgency to fix everything that is unfair towards girls and women, and we don't pay attention to how that may affect the boys and men. The inequalities and the imbalances of today, even though some were orchestrated, are a result of a time when labor was intense and it required a gender that was physically stronger to carry out the tasks. Employment was gender. The mines and the other workplaces were more suitable for men. Thus, most women would be at home to cook, clean, and look after the children. It made sense because of the physically demanding jobs of yesteryears. But today, we have more opportunities and better equipment in the mines that females can use with ease. As a result, a man cannot make an excuse for not being able to cook, look after children, and do any other house chores. If we are moving away from the traditional ways of doing things, let us not encourage boys and men to change their ways. We should teach heterosexual women that financial responsibility in the house is not a gender role. Women too should look after the house financially. I can already hear someone who believes that their ability to provide financially is what makes them a real man, whatever that means. Well, to be able to put bread on the table at home is commendable. However, it is not at all that it takes to be a man. Furthermore, it would be women who argue that it is a man's job to take care of me. We quickly forget that the men and women who lived in a time where men went to make money and women were left at home to do all the invaluable chores did that due to circumstances. It was not what defined them, it is what the state of the affairs dictated. Every other week, I spend time shaping how boys are socialized. We have a platform that we have created to ensure that we educate boys about the kind of men the world would like to have from their generation. It is not about the chores that they carry out at home. It is also about how they respond to situations emotionally and otherwise. We also make them aware that they are most likely to live in an equal and inclusive world. This would be a society where boys and girls, women and men have equal opportunities and they are not discriminated against because of their gender or sexuality. Nevertheless, an equal world is one where we balance what we do on the left with what we do on the right, lest we want to make everyone believe that boys and men are the only ones who require fixing and everything about girls and women is perfectly fine. And I can tell you that everything is not fine. I will be the first one to acknowledge that we live in a world that favors boys and men more. It does not mean it doesn't support girls, women, and their ambitions. It does, and this should also be led to correcting the contentions they have. Nobody is saying that girls must now emulate boys. Yes, it would be a more equal world if we make a resolution to fix both girls and boys as we ensure that boys go to the kitchen to prepare their meals and how to turn the machine washing knob to quick wash or full wash. We should equally ensure that girls know that paying the bill when they are out with their boyfriends is okay. Later on, they will become women who also know that paying for the house bills is not a crime. It is equally their responsibility. And that is the opinion of Kabela Chabalala, a writer and columnist. You are listening to the Mid Morning Talk on Salam Media. We will be right back.